Paul, hi, welcome.
Thank you, Joe. Morning.
You must be tired, are you?
I am. I am. It's been a long week, yeah. But Major's a long week now. I do a lot of work with NBC on top of Sky, so it's late night. So we normally don't come off air till about 10:30 at night. We'll do a 2 or maybe sometimes a 3 hour post game show.
Yeah. Well, it's good to have you on, so we appreciate it. And by the way, I know you were in this studio back in October territory. There was a
Mm,
colossal response on emails to your interview, just to say, and a lot of people, it really resonated with them, the way you spoke about your father in particular. So just to let you know, a huge
yeah.
reaction.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe. Yeah. It's tough times. He's still going strong. Yeah, he's a great man. And I was up at the Ulster final in Clonus last Saturday. It was the first Donegal game I've been to without him, and yeah, it was kind of sad to be there without him, and all his old friends in Donegal were all there watching him. So yeah, it hits home every day.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does. Um, in the build up to the Masters this year, Shane Lowry called Scotty Scheffler impressively unimpressive. So he played around with him. He's like, "How did you shoot six under? I didn't even see it happening."
The old-fashioned backhanded compliment. Yeah, look, I mean, a lot's been said about his game, Joe, and he's very good at every level. I mean, his statistics, and I know I've said this before, his statistics are the closest we've ever seen to Tiger. And now it's 3 years in a row of producing those statistics. And it's his ball striking. And it's not impressive as in flush, as in massive ball speed. It's ball control and the relentlessness and the consistency of what he does. And now his short game has really improved, particularly his putting. He went to Phil Kenyon 2, 3 years ago, and then he changed putter into the mallet-headed putter, and he's gone now into a top 20 putter on top of a phenomenal game that he's been producing. And then you throw in the secret ingredient, which is his competitiveness. And, I go on about it, and I'm going to continue going on about it. He's the best competitor in the game, one of the best most competitive sports people I've ever come across. His ability to bounce back from mistakes in the difficulty that golf is, the mental discipline that golf is just phenomenal. Again, another statistic off the charts is his bounce back ability, his ability to recover from mistakes.
Well, I heard you mention that across the week, and it is staggering when you see it on paper. Justin Ray had the stat. So the field average for following up a bogey with a birdie or an eagle, in effect, getting that shot back. Field average, and we're talking about elite players here, is somewhere between 17 and 18%. Scotty, over these 4 days, followed up a bogey with either birdie or eagle, 62%. This
Mm-hmm.
is off the charts. Frightening.
Yeah, absolutely. That's my point. And you can say, oh, he's a good competitor, and people say, oh, yeah, right. But now we've evidence to show it, Joe. And I know what it's like as a golfer. It's easy to spiral out there. It's easy to, when you make one mistake, you go, oh my God, what a shot. What an idiot. What am I doing? What's happened to my swing? Oh, and all of a sudden you spiral into maybe a run of 3 or 4 holes, and you've lost ground. So the ability to reset and not just come back and make a par on the next hole. My old coach used to say, make a par. Once you make a bogey, make a par on the next hole. But the ability to come back and actually make a birdie, it's just phenomenal. It really is phenomenal, and he does it time after time. And I think it's a nod to his competitiveness. That bugger that, I'm going to get this back as soon as possible. It actually drives him into even more focus. Rather than spiraling, he goes the opposite way.
It's incredible because around the, he had a terrible front line yesterday by his standards. Everything was going left, and John Rahm, this is not a nothing name that you suddenly see go level with you at the turn. And I found myself, I was watching, and I said, okay, Scotty, fine, let's see what you're made of here. And literally 4 holes later, I said, okay, fine. That just does not happen. He killed it in 5 holes.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We came on the set last night on live from Joe, and before as he was getting his microphone on, and that's what I said to him. I said, well, it was getting a bit tight there around 9 holes. I mean, what did you think? Did you think, oh God, I'm letting this slip? And he just looked at me dead cold and just shook his head and said, no.
Hmm.
You know, you know, this guy's he wasn't panicking. I mean, Brandon has got a great term. He doesn't get sick in a sea storm. He doesn't get seasick in a storm. And in other words, he doesn't panic when the storm's going against you. And we saw that yesterday. The ability to reset on the back nine and play the way he did was brilliant, and move away from Rahm. I thought Rahm was unlucky now, in fairness.
Oh, so unlucky. Yeah.
Yeah, the hand of fate worked against John at critical moments.
Yeah. Put on 13 should have dropped, and the bounce of a ball on 14. That's a 2-3 shot differential, crucial point in the tournament. Yeah.
Absolutely. And also the second shot to 15. I mean, that was a world-class shot. The pitch in the front of the green and just got to the back of the green and then didn't get up and down. There's 3 shots, Joe, that would have absolutely changed, the situation at the top of that leaderboard for the start, but also the pressure that then would have been on Scotty. So, yeah, I mean, that's the ebbs and flows. And, hand of fate and destiny have a big thing, a big say in professional golf. I mean, Rory's second shot to 15 in the Masters, as fantastic as it was, but from 216 yards with a 40-yard hook, nobody is good enough to be able to pitch it in a 4-yard square, which is what he did. You need a little bit of the hand of fate at the right time. I mean, Rory at the Masters too, a number of times hitting it in the trees and having gaps and being able to escape from 7 on the last day, for example, being able to escape from what were poor shots.
It would be wrong to give people the impression that Scotty Scheffler is not an emotional person, because you could listen to everything that we've said and just think to yourself, this guy's cold. He doesn't feel anything. And yet, right back to the first Masters win where he's in tears on the morning that Sunday, and Meredith almost has to talk him into getting to the first tee, right through to last night where eventually the enormity of winning did hit him and he went down on his honkers for several minutes after the presentation. That suggests there are deep, readily felt emotions inside, and that makes it all the more impressive that when the sea storm happens, calm.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more. Again, well, we talked about that on the set last night, and he talked about the night before. What's it like sleeping on a 3-shot lead in Augusta, 3-shot lead not in Augusta, in a major championship, and he said it was fine. I had 7 or 8 hours sleep. I had a lie in this morning, and Meredith looked after the baby, so I had a little bit longer of bed than I thought I was going to have, and so there's definitely a getting used to it, more so than what you described there the first time when he won the Masters, his first major. And yeah, there's a lot more to come from this guy, Joe. I mean, he really is that good. And the other thing about him is, and not a lot of people know this, so he's got a really deep Christian faith. He's got a real belief in Christianity. And Bernard Langer was that way too. And it's almost like handing over responsibility and pressure to a higher being. And people can say what they want about Christianity, but when you hand over that belief that my destiny is in the hands of God, and I really believe that he's going to do the best for me, even if it means not winning, it does relieve somewhat of the pressure on your shoulders. And it's a powerful weapon. It's a very powerful weapon if you have that kind of deep faith, which he does.
Yeah. The chilling thought for everybody else, Rory included, is that he did not play that well to my eye, as we know he can play. I mean, those two pockets when he went red hot, Saturday evening, Green Mile, took control of the tournament, and then Sunday around the turn, killed off the tournament. Aside from that, what did he have? His B game?
Yeah, B, maybe even C.
Yeah.
And that's what we talked about last night. He said for 3 of the 4 rounds, he played really poorly. Right. First 2 rounds, he said, I did unbelievable to stay where I was on the leaderboard. Randy Smith, his coach, was in town, so they got a good bit of work done on Friday afternoon. And even yesterday, he said, I didn't have my best stuff. And that's what he's most proud of, is that he was able to chisel out scores while not having his best stuff. And that's where the short game comes in, Joe. He couldn't have done that 3 years ago. His putting from 4 to 8 feet now is one of the best on tour. And that's a critical distance, because on good shots, it's birdie putts. And when you're struggling to try to get up and down, it's par putts. Yeah. And he's become really proficient at that distance.
There's something interesting when you think that over the last couple of days, Scheffler, DeChambeau and John Rahm, they are not orthodox players. And I heard you and Brandel on the Golf Channel paying tribute to Randy Smith, his coach, for not touching this swing, having the good sense to understand that this may look a bit funny on the eye, but there's a lot right with it. John Rahm has talked before about being born with a clubbed foot and almost like, you think of the poor baby. It must have been heartbreaking. They had to break his foot several times as an infant to get it some way set. But obviously that impacted what he could do on a takeaway. But the Spanish Federation, whoever worked with him, the good sense to understand there's enough right here that we don't need to make this guy orthodox. DeChambeau has almost gone his own route himself. There's a lesson in there for a lot of us hackers who are trying to be perfect.
Yeah, there is. There is. Look, again, simply in a golf swing, we all have our DNA as human beings, and we all have DNA as golfers, and our golf swings has a DNA. And what great golf coaches do is they enhance that DNA and don't try to change it. It's called having ownership of your swing and ownership of your game. Understand, able to correct it in mid flow. So yesterday, for example, Scotty played poorly the first 5-6 holes. This is what he said on the set last night. He said, "I played really poorly, and then I hit a good drive on 7, I hit a good drive on 8, and I hit a good drive on 9. And on 8 and 9, I missed the fairway two times. And I said to Ted Scott, his caddy, Teddy, I thought I really swung those clubs well." And Ted Scott, again, an important part of his team, said, "Yeah, they look good to me, Scotty. Maybe just your alignment is off. Maybe aim just a bit further right." What did he do in the 10T? He aimed 10. He squared up his shoulders, aimed 10 yards further right, and then just striped it down 10, striped it down 11. He said when he hit his tee shot down 11, he said he knew then he had it again.
So interesting.
So being able to correct. Nicholas talked, Joe, about golf is a game of adjustments. And if you have ownership of your game, you can adjust in mid-flow. You're not getting seasick in the storm because you've got a way of getting out of it. And that's what he did. He was able to adjust yesterday in the heat of battle, in the heat of a major championship.
These things are notoriously hard to predict, impossible really. But like this trajectory of 3 majors, 28 years of age, 15 PGA Tour wins, like you combine the two, the PGA Tour wins and the majors, age of 29, only Woods, Nicklaus and Scheffler had 15 and the 3 majors. So he's off to a hell of a start. Like hard to see this guy not getting 7-8.
Yeah, of course it is right now. I mean, it's easy to have recency bias and you're looking at how he did it, but absolutely. I mean, we've all been saying this behind the scenes for quite a while that this guy is probably the most likely to get to 10 majors for the way he plays, the ability that he has. He's constantly moving the ball both ways. And mentally, he's so strong. But as we know, Joe, life is not a straight line. And at the moment, he said again last night, my life off the golf course is fantastic. And on the golf course is fantastic. He's still in his 20s. Life is brilliant. It's not a straight line. There's going to be curveballs, whether they come in his golf game or whether they may come in his life. That's just a fact of it. How he deals with those is going to determine it. And should he remain injury free? But at the moment, on the current trajectory, based on the game that he has, the competitiveness that he has, the hunger that he has, there's no reason, absolutely no reason to say that he will probably be the most dominant player of his era. His statistics are showing that. And now his win percentage is up there with Rory's. He's now an 11% win percentage in terms of tournaments played to wins. He's on 11%. Rory's on 11%. Jack Nicklaus was 12% in his career. And then Tiger is off the scale at 22%.
Jesus, okay. 22. I thought you were going to say 14. One question, by the way, I'm curious for your thoughts on this. Bryson DeChambeau, who you can't but like what he does at times is breathtaking, particularly with the driver at the moment, and his short game is extraordinarily good. But you take his irons at Augusta, which were dreadful by the standards required, and then he said this week he's not a good wind player. On Saturday, crucial point in the tournament, he is level, give or take, with Scheffler. Scheffler hasn't fully taken control yet. And a key moment for both is the 17th. Scheffler would kind of hold the ball up and make a birdie and really, take control of the tournament. DeChambeau got to 17, par 3, over water. There are right to left gusts. The water is left. Like, the shot to hit is not a right to left shot. And also, don't throw it a million miles up in the air. And there's a degree of, well, that's all he can do. He always hits it right to left, can't but throw it up in the air, the swing speed he goes at. And I thought there is something you talk about these major events as full examinations of a player's game. I can't, not to overstate it, but there are amateurs who can work the ball well both ways. I thought that was just so disappointingly one-dimensional.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I highlighted that on Sky at the time. And, Yeah, there's limitations in his game, Joe. As dynamic as he is off the tee, and his short game again is phenomenal, but his iron play is really poor. He was almost last in that category. I think he was 51st out of 54 guys who made the cut in Augusta. Again this week, he was down ranked 50 out of the 54 who made the cut in approach play, and a lot of it is down to when the pins are on the right hand side that he misses greens. And because he plays only one-dimensionally right to left. He's got limitations. He's got to figure out how he's going to play that shot. You see, his golf swing is built for hitting the ball a million miles. He swings the club into, out, and on the upswing. And that is great for generating speed. And he's been obsessed about generating speed for the last 4 or 5 years. And he brings that swing then to his irons. And that creates too much of an into-out path, too much of a right to left shape. So he's almost, if he's going to continue to be the massive hitter that he is, he's going to have to change his swing somewhat for the irons. Now that's a very difficult thing to do. How can you have two swings? One for your irons and one for the driver. But we'll see how he's going to approach that. He talked last night about, I got to find a ball that goes straighter and all that kind of rubbish. I'm not buying that. He's got to change his golf swing. There's too much in doubt in his golf swing. Great for the driver, not good for the irons. Too much shape right to left and one-dimensional. And there's going to be moments when tournament championship venues ask you questions. And you're right about 17 on day 3. The wind was off the right, the pin was on the right, and you had water left. That was a nightmare scenario for him.
Yeah. He's
interesting.
He's so limited there. Him and his caddy almost need to say, "Will we just go right bunker? Is that just the thing to do?"
Yeah.
Which is not, but that's not how you win a major. You know what I mean? Either you do what Scotty did.
Yeah, I mean that was the obvious one, Joe. But if you think about the previous hole, 16 was the previous hole where he drove it down the bunker on the right, if you can remember. Sorry, he drove it down the rough on the right hand side, if you can remember this. And the pin was cut behind the bunker on the right hand side, and again the wind was off the right, and he had no angle because he couldn't shape the ball, even coming out of the rough on the right, to hold it on that green. And again, he hit his right to left shape. Again, he pitched in the middle of the green. And again, he cambered left off the left-hand side. And he made a bogey there. So he went bogey double. So he dropped 3 shots there at crucial moments. And again, both times because the pin was on the right and the wind was off the right. So it's not just one occasion. And then you look at the quality players going in there. You look at Scheffler. So I showed it that night on live from. I highlighted those shots that you talked about there. I showed Alex Noren hitting it in there. Granted, he's the opposite. He's a comfortable left-right player. But because of the shot tracing now, you can see what they're doing. And the shot tracer illustrated that Noren's ball did not move in that wind, and he hunted down the flag to about 10 feet. And then they saw Scheffler do the same thing. His ball did not move. The shot tracer did not move because the ball was cutting against the wind. Whereas Bryson's did, and it moved about 25 yards in the air and then banked and down into the water.
Yeah, and not to dwell on it overly, I want to move on, but everyone has a tendency, obviously, but and would prefer to play one shot shape or the other. But like, I would have thought guys this good, we're like, well, look, I can take a stab at getting a left or right the odd time. It shouldn't be that hard for him to have a crack at it, no?
Yeah, you would think. You would think. I mean, moving the ball left to right for an elite player is not the most difficult thing to do. So, yeah, you would think. He'll figure it out. He's figured out a lot of things, and he's a pioneer. This guy is a pioneer, and he's a maverick, Joe. He does things his own way. He'll figure it out. He'll have he's got a massive team around him, by the way. Probably the guy with the most around him. I mean, he must have 20 social media guys that follow every move that he makes at a major championship, all for his YouTube and for his social media. But he's also got technicians around him as well, too. And there's constant looking at data for every single shot that he hits through the TrackMans. And they'll figure it out. It'll be interesting to see when he comes to Oakmont in a month's time, if those limitations that were exposed this week and that were exposed in Augusta, has he gone some way down the road of fixing that? And what we're lucky to have in terms of us who watch it on TV is the shot tracer.
Yeah,
they can't hide anymore. Players can't hide anymore that, I was unlucky, the wind popped it and that's what happens. No.
Strange week in the life of Rory McIlroy. So on the course, his driver is tested as non-conforming, and so he has to put a new driver head in the bag. How disruptive was that? I'm seeing different things in different places as to how different the driver was to the one he would have been using over the last while.
It would have been, I wouldn't say destructive. It shouldn't have been destructive. And there's technicians out there all the time, and obviously Rory is getting all the support that he needs in that regard. And I'm sure he had a couple of spare heads as well. So he probably put one of those in.
Okay. But sometimes people talk about drivers like they're almost like a wand. You know what I mean? Like no two are the same. There's like a mythical kind of romance. Is that all true or is that BS?
I think a lot of it is in the head.
Okay.
In the mental head, not in the head of the driver.
No pun intended.
Yeah, no fun. Yeah, I think it is. If I put 5 driver heads out there in front of you and said, okay, tell me the difference between those 5, Joe, I think you'd find it very hard to see what the difference is. Having said that, the lofts can, even though it says 10.5 loft, it can be 10 3/4 loft. But they have ways of testing that as well too, of checking that.
Okay, I would say, I mean, to my eye, which is not worth much. I don't think he's driven it brilliantly this year. And even last week when he said that it was almost too wide open and it's hard to kind of get your lines of sight and aim a shot, line up a shot almost off a tree. He's like, I can't wait to get to Quail Hollow where I kind of had those tighter lines. I was like, don't love the sound of that. And then so it proved, like particularly the first day, he was just trying to fight this course from the rough, and it's impossible there.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to drive it well around Quail. It's normally his strength, and I'd agree with you, Joe. I thought he drove it well in Augusta.
Yes,
and he didn't drive it well last week, and interesting what he said about the sight lines, and then he went again and he drove the ball really poorly for him this week. He was a 42nd best ball striker last week of the guys who made the cut. We have data on that. It's called tee to green strokes gained, and that's basically who's the most efficient getting the ball from the tee to the green. And as you can imagine, Scotty Scheffler was number 1 in that category, but Rory was 42nd. So there was 41 guys who played better tee to green than Rory yesterday and in the all week. So he's not on his game. I said at the start of the week on Live From, and I said it on Sky too. And mentally, this game is such a mental game. The mental game is the glue that brings everything together, Joe. And if you're not tuned in mentally, it looks like you're swinging the club badly. It looks like you're swinging the club, out of sync, but it's not really. Your rhythm is gone. You're not in harmony, and your focus is dropped. So the glue is not coming together of all facets of your game. You're not turning 3 shots into 2. And my worry with Rory is the euphoria of the last month, and it's natural, of course. It's been phenomenal for what he's done the last month. To be only the 2nd player in 60 years and the 6th player in history to win the Grand Slam, absolutely he's enjoyed it. It was a massive weight off his shoulders. And could he come down from that euphoria? And it's time after time, everywhere he went, whether it was at home in the Bears Club or whether it was in Ireland or England or wherever he did on his travels, or when he played with Shane in that 4-ball event, and then when he played up in Philadelphia, everywhere he goes, you walk into a hotel, there's always somebody congratulating you. And it's great and it's wonderful. It's a great part of success, but it does drain you somewhat, and it's hard to stay with that focus driven. And I know I've said it before. Again, I'm repeating myself here a lot. I'm sorry this morning, but
pointy elbows.
The pointy elbows. that's not good for the pointy elbows. Everybody telling you how great you are is not good for the pointy elbows.
Yeah.
So maybe there will be a reset now. All the focus is going to be on Scotty. There's going to be chat that, like we just had, that probably Scotty's going to get to 10 majors before Rory. That kind of stuff drives him, and maybe drives him into focus again, because he wasn't with it this week. He was all over the place mentally. And I walked 2 practice rounds with him, Joe, on the Tuesday and the Wednesday. And he was so happy. As a person, I was so happy for him. And you could see how happy he was for himself. And he was full of chat. He was in a great spot. And that's wonderful for Rory McIlroy, the person. The competitor, Rory McIlroy, doesn't thrive in that environment.
Well, you've raised an interesting prospect there, because, and I'm sort of more with you in this camp, but we had Jaime Diaz on last week, who's, you know him well, wonderful, articulate, insightful voice in the game. And he was looking at Quail Hollow, and he said, I sort of think Rory plays best when he's springing his step, relaxed, happy. And I'm sort of more you. I think when his back's up, he's a bit better, more focused, more dialed in. But the predicament there, Paul, is like, well, for Rory to win more majors, he needs to be a 10% less happy person and needs to be walking those fairways just a little bit. And that's where he's going to have to find himself. So there you go.
Well, I don't know about less happy, but more focused and more driven and chasing something down. I always feel he's best chasing something down when he's on the front foot. And if you look at the situations when he was on the back foot in Augusta, that's when he played his best shots.
Okay.
He made a mess of 13, made a mess of 14, and then his second shot to 15. Then making a mess of the playoff hole. And actually, Justin did him a favor in the playoff hole when he hit a really good second shot in the forced Rory onto the front foot to take on that shot, and he hit it down to 3 feet and wins the Masters. So I always feel he's better when he's going at it and
Yeah.
he's chasing it down rather than defending.
Yeah, purpose, clarity, all that kind of stuff. So what's the word on the media blackout? Because Wednesday or whenever he did his press conference, at ease with himself, as you've alluded to, did a walk and talk with Johnson Wagner again. That's not something you have to do. That's extracurricular, and was in a good place. So I know, he didn't have a good Thursday and probably knew he was out of the tournament, but he hadn't shot 90. Why the 4 days of not speaking to the media? What's the word?
I haven't spoke to him, and I haven't spoke to Sean. I haven't spoke to any of his team this week. What I can guess that it is something around the driver, and the fact that the rumors swirled around him and didn't swirl around anybody else. Scotty admitted last night that his driver also failed on Tuesday, and he swapped it out on Tuesday. And I think he was trying to put out the fire by not commenting, and what it did was put fuel on the fire.
Yeah, because it almost to the crazies on X, it looked like he's running from this. He's got something to hide.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he doesn't have anything to hide, Joe. These things happen regularly. These driver faces are so thin now. And the guys have so much speed now that they do get worn down. And this is a regular occurrence. So it's not that unusual for this to happen. It happens a lot. Now, here's where I have a problem with it. And I said this again last night. Here's where I have a problem, Joe. The authorities are not transparent with it. They don't come out and say, we've tested X amount of players and these guys failed and they swapped it out. In my view, with the money swirling around the game at the moment, and there's so much money in the game, surely they can pay some rules person to come out every single week on tour and test every one of the 150 drivers or 100 drivers or whoever's what the field size is that week. It's not a biggie. It takes 5 minutes to test.
Right.
And every player should be scrutinized every single week so that nothing kind of leaks out with this. So what happened in this scenario is they regularly come out. Certainly at the big events, they come out, the majors. And I don't know if Rory's was tested at the Masters or not, but there's a 1 in 3 chance. They normally test about a third of the field. Maybe at the Masters, they tested more because the field was so small. I'm not sure. Anyway, the USGA come out. They randomly pick a third of the field. They test their drivers. Some fail, most don't. So what the technicians do then is they get out the spare heads and they start working and work them back in again. The fact that Rory's story failed, and the story leaked rather, I would say that's what irritated him, because he would have known. He would have known on Tuesday, once his failed, the first thing you say to the technician is, or to the USGA guy is, did anybody else's fail? And they'll tell you, yeah. Now, the USGA and the PGA of America, again, not transparent. They keep this secret under the guise of, we're not keeping it secret because we're protecting the players. They're not protecting the players. They're exposing them. They're throwing them to the wolves because there's so many media at these events now, and Chinese whispers go around, and all of a sudden something turns into a huge story. So I think the whole procedure is wrong. I think everybody should be tested every week, so there's absolutely no question. And B, anybody who does fail, they should say, look, A, B, and C failed, and they've swapped out. And I think then everybody would know where they start. It's not a biggie. It's something that happens regularly, and particularly with the guys who have high ball speeds. And not most of the guys on tour do. These faces are so thin now, Joe. It's easy when you're belting balls, particularly on the range. You're hitting maybe 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 in a row, just belt in the middle of that driver, and they're always hitting in the same spot, remember. So you are going to wear it down. Just look at some of these irons, for example. Look at the round spot, the 10 pp spot that the guys have in their iron shot. So you can imagine what the same thing happens to a driver. You just don't see it.
Yes. And it's worth stating, so say his driver wasn't tested at Augusta and say it was in broadly the same shape it was when it failed the test this week. We're talking, depending on where I read or where I look, somewhere between 1 and 5 yards difference. This trampoline effect, this thinning out of the face. This is not like oh my God, he's 20 yards further down the fairway kind of a job.
Yeah, Yeah, it is. Yeah, look, I mean, I don't like the what modern equipment has done, Joe. Basically, it's got a very thin face now, and when you hit the ball, the face bends and the ball crunches, and then you get this explosion
Yeah,
coming off it. So the more speed you have, the more explosion you get coming off it. I don't like the technology of what it does, and that's why the faces are as thin as they are. Um, I certainly wouldn't want to be jumping to conclusions about what may or may not happen in Augusta. Was he tested? Was he not? I don't know.
yeah,
But what I can say is maybe maybe just the driver just gave out last week. Brandel showed a piece last week in where he played last week in
the
Philadelphia,
truest. Yeah,
and in the truest, yeah, and he showed one tee shot that Rory hit, and after Rory hit it, he looked at the face of his driver as
yeah,
if that was weird,
yeah,
and that could have been the moment when it gave way. Sometimes it cracks, Joe. Sometimes the drivers crack. You had Bryson DeChambeau last year at the US Open going out into the last round, and he had to change heads about 20 minutes before he hit his first tee shot because his head cracked. And it's a hairline fracture that you see on it. And that could have been the moment that the face gave way a little bit for Rory.
yeah.
But we're not sure. But because there's no transparency here, Joe, and that leads to speculation. And then all of a sudden people run one place to another, and all of a sudden a story develops.
Yes.
And Rory not speaking didn't help. But I think he was thrown under the bus by the authorities, not coming out and being transparent and clear.
Yeah. Yeah. So look, I know you're not Sean and you're not Rory, so we're kind of speculating as to why he didn't speak. So maybe he's peeved at the leak and he's saying, well, sod everyone, I'm not talking. But that almost vacuum probably created more noise and speculation. And he could have cleared this up. Like Scotty, as you said, spoke about it for several minutes last night in his winner's press conference, and it wasn't a big deal. So it still seems strange because Rory's such a confident, articulate type that I would think he could deal with that question in about 30 seconds flat, put it to bed. So that's why it still didn't fully add up to me. You never know what's going on. We may find out in due course, we may not. But it was an odd thing for him to do. 4 days.
It was. I'd agree with that, Joe. Absolutely. And one of the things that makes Rory so appealing to so many is he's got opinions. Now, yeah, he certainly divides opinion. Some people like it, some people don't. But he's always free to give his opinion. He doesn't care. He's going to give what he says. So for Rory not to speak to the media, it's a big deal. And to do it 4 days in a row, it's a really big deal. We'll find out in time what the reason for that being. But it was a miss not having him last week speak to the media, particularly the guy his first major championship, having won the Grand Slam. We all wanted to hear what he had to say. I mean, Bryson gave an interview when he finished yesterday. Disappointment, obviously, but a brilliant interview. John Rahm gave an interview yesterday. Disappointment, obviously, but a brilliant insight. And there's a new norm creating on the tour, Joe, of players not giving interviews. I don't personally like it. We've called out Morikawa on it. I'm not going to defend Rory for doing it as well, too. It's something that I think the players should be mandated to do. And the reason they don't do it, Joe, is they're not mandated. If you're playing for Liverpool or you're playing for an NFL team over here, the NFL mandate you to do it. And if you don't, you get a sizable fine. In golf, they don't. And again, it goes back to the leadership and in golf. And golf, the tours are members' organizations, and the players are all powerful. And whatever the players want to do, they do. And I think it's a mistake again. Just like I'd like to see new procedures in terms of testing clubs. I'd also like to see new procedures in terms of dealing with the media. I think it's important. The media is a prism that people view golf through. And if you want to project the game, and if you want to project golf, and you want to compete as a sport and as a business for golf against other sports, you need the players to talk. And it's so easy to talk when you've had a good day, but you also want a couple of sound bites. And the guys in Golf Channel, they've got stats and everything, Joe. There wasn't not one tournament, win, lose, or draw in Tiger's career where he didn't give a sound bite. Now, it might have been boring and it might have been one or two, and that's it, 1 or 2 sentences, but he always did something. Even, when his glutes went in San Diego car park and he was changing his shoes, he still gave, 1 or 2 quotes before he got in the car and sped off. And I think that's an important part of the game. At the moment, the players don't do it because they're not mandated. And I think that rule needs to be changed.
I would agree totally. And you'd be a good person to put this to because you'd have a sense of all sides. Where I think it's doubly damaging for the game is, one, you don't get to hear the players. And there is no doubt that everyone's enjoyment and interest in the sport at major time is increased when you see the Bryson interview or you see McIlroy do an interview. So it's important in that sense. But secondly, I do wonder if it's putting manners and too much manners on broadcasters and journalists who are holding their tongue because they think if I say boo here, never going to get an interview from this player again. And that makes the sport a less enjoyable watch. I have to be honest, I think there's a bit of holding tongue and there's a bit of, you just, we'll say nothing here because then it'll get back to your man and you know what he's like and he won't talk to us. Like, did Lowry get more of a free pass for digging up the turf than Patrick Reed would have got? Yeah, he did. And I think the media have to hold their hands up on that. And I think part of that is, we sort of want to keep a good relationship with Shane. He's not mandated to talk to us. I think that's where it's doubly damaging, is if like the commentary around the game becomes just blanded into oblivion.
Yeah. You're speaking with a media hat on for sure, Joe, with that. But I'd agree with it. Like you say, I've seen all sides of it now. I've been from a player, through being on the boards and how the business of the tour operates and now in the media. So I've got a real kind of 360 view of the game from different ways. And I see golf as a sport that is competing against massive sports over here in America, particularly, and the players are your secret sauce, and you need to get as much as you can from the players, and the media is really, really important. And if you talk to guys like Jaime Diaz, who covers all sports, other sports, some of the great writers, and they say absolutely golfers get such a free pass compared to other sports. And yet they're very prickly if there's any kind of a comment against them that they take as a slight. So other sports writers who deal with all other sports do have the same view as you. And I think the media is an important part in projecting the sport, and the players are an important part to the media. And if golf is going to really compete, it needs to move into the modern world of players. Giving a bit more to the media and being mandated, I think would be a good first step. And now there is talk that might happen now with SSG. These power group behind the PGA Tour now have invested a couple of $1 billion into the PGA Tour. There is talk that these guys are jumping up and down about it and they're going to force the hand of the tour because I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
But remember, golf is the only sport, Joe, where it's a members organization. It's a non-profit members organization. That's what the PGA Tour is.
So look, that's kind of that. It was a strange PGA. I'll be honest, I hated it for about 3.5 days. It was good for about an hour and then I hated it again. It was just Scotty's brilliance and the strange leaderboard. Probably for Rory, the perfect winner to be like, all right, okay, that was a great month of partying. And here we go again. I need to get back on the horse. It's kind of it's like episode 6 of a 9-parter kind of a episode. It's just setting up the next 2, I think.
Yeah, may well be. I mean, we're going to Oakmont now for the US Open. That's in a month's time, Joe. That's an old-fashioned US Open golf course. They set up with high rough. It's a brilliant golf course. It's a ball striker's course. And it's going to be great. It's going to be a great narrative around there. You're going to have a real top players at the top of that leaderboard. And then, of course, we move on to Port Rush after that. So, golf is becoming increasingly more and more about the majors and the Ryder Cup. Those 5 have separated themselves away from every other event, and they're the ones that people tune into.
Yeah. Well, listen, thank you so much for doing this. I can only imagine how tired the voice is and the body as well. So it's greatly appreciated. Paul McGinley. Thanks, Paul.
You're welcome, Joe. All the best.